Yeah, good afternoon to all of you. So friends, a very warm welcome to this 27th in the series webinar presented by Inclusive Human Resource Development Initiative, or IHRDI, on a very important topic today, that is issues related to differently abled or special persons. Friends, as we know that this body, we consider it as a temple because of the senses, the five senses that we have, including the sense of sight, the sound, smell, taste, and touch. And just consider, if somebody does not have any or all of these senses, how could one be able to navigate himself in the society? So when we talk about disabilities, my dear friend, we talk about some kind of infirmity, some kind of obstruction, or some kind of inadequacy in terms of some kind of a deficit in the human body, which generally hampers maybe some kind of smell, some kind of sense that we have talked about. So this could be in the domain of the physical ailment or the physical infirmity, or it could be mental infirmity, or it could be intellectual infirmity, or it could be a stimulation infirmity also. So all of these, when we talk about, brings about, hampers the ability of the human beings to carry out their works in a better manner. So we are talking about the quality of life of a human being. So somehow these five or six senses that we have, and include to that the orthopedical part, wherein we walk, and the arms, wherein we do certain activities with their arms and all, and any kind of infirmity there will hamper how a human can survive in the society, how he can grow in the society. As per the 2011 census of Indian, around, there's a total population of 121 crores, and out of 121 crore population, 2.86 crore population are differently able, roughly more than 2% of the Indian population. So now we are in 2020, around roughly 10 years have passed, and I think this figure could have even increased to more than 3 crores now. And mind you, when we say 3 crores out of maybe 130 crore, it may not be, it may not seem to be a big figure, but if you just Google and see how many countries in this world and how many cities in this world do not have the population of 3 crore. So that way one can if see, so it's a major problem. Around 3 crore of the population of this country has some kind of infirmity which we consider as differently abled or specially abled. And the forefathers, the framers of our constitution, they were very much aware about this issue. And Article 41 of the Indian Constitution, which talks about the directive principles of state policy, has talked about improving the quality of life of the various disadvantaged sections, including the disabled and differently able people. And laws were formulated. Laws have been formulated to mitigate and provide them a better sense of quality of life. The Disabilities Act of 1995, which was amended in the year 2016, also talks about it and comes about various government measures how to improve the quality of life of the citizens, Indian citizens, who are differently abled. So friends, when we talk about, there are so many challenges, there are so many issues which are involved into how human being who has some kind of infirmity in the field of mental or physical aspects, or stimulating or intellectual aspect, how he navigates his life. So these issues and challenges are exhaustive, not exhaustive in nature, but they may include things like accessibility to spaces, like a bus stand or a public park or to a office. That's a very major part. Then it also other issue and challenge is the health part, how the health of these human beings are to be looked after, because health is a costly proposition. And then linked it with the nutrition part. And out of while I was talking about the census, the out of 2 crore plus population that are disabled or infirm, more than 69% they live in the rural areas. So you could see that they do not have the access to resources also. So how they have to bring about their life, and what access to health they have. Further challenge is the education. We do not have in the same schools, we do not have the setups wherein these people could be provided with education. and it is a costly affair also. And just see, and this is again a matter of research also, and a matter of some other type point, wherein how many schools, colleges, universities are there who take in view the inclusive approach towards education. So I think a lot of things have to be desired. Further, the data that is available for the disabled, and because data is the first step, that is also not an exhaustive data, and it may include and it may not include certain aspects. And because if the data is not okay, the decision making will not be okay. So this is another challenge which is therein. And the last but not the least, though there are so many which I may not be able to summarize also, which I may not be able to talk about also. One is the the perception of the overall society towards people who are differently able. Even if there's, I mean, it could be a mocking perception. They could be mocked for the disability which is there because of some God plan. And even if it is not mocked, the other could be a kind of a sympathy, bechara. That feeling of bechara is also there in the society. And our media, our movies, they have projected this aspect also. Though there are certain other movies also which have projected disabled and differently abled people, and then they have done so well. So but there are very few movies which have that way projected. But in our regional language movies also, I'm talking about Punjabi and others which I've seen, somehow they have been mocked and made fun of. So this feeling of bechara on one hand side, and this being mocked on the other hand side, actually puts a lot of pressure on these individuals, because their one or two senses are already not there. And plus the society is not looking at them kindly. And even if they're looking at them kindly, they are looking at them sympathetically, not empathetically. So these are the various issues and challenges which are there. And so friends, today we will be talking about all such issues, and we have a very eminent people coming on the panel today who are very passionate about such issues, and who have done a lot of work while they were and still doing a lot of work in this regard. So friends, I will request you to welcome today the three panelists, Professor Dr. J.S. Seni, Mr. Niranjan Khatri, and Mr. Harman Sidhu. And just to give a brief about these three, it's my pleasure to introduce these three very briefly to you. Professor Dr. J.S. Seni is a former professor with NITTR, or National Institute for Technical Teachers Training and Research. He has done, I mean, biodata is so big that even if I talk about, it will take a lot of time. But he has done a lot of work in the field of vocational education, skill development, teaching, training, research. And he's very passionate about, the issues about differently abled and special persons. And while his stint at NITTR, he made sure that the quality of life of these people improved, and he's done a lot of work for such people. The second panelist, my dear friends, is Mr. Niranjan Khatri. He is the founder of NGO I Sambhav, and prior to that, he was a senior consultant, Skills Council's Green Jobs. He is also an ex-general manager, environment initiatives of ITC Hotels. And while during his stint at ITC, he has done a lot of work for providing skills and employment to the people from the disabled or specially abled persons. So request you to welcome Mr. Khatri. The third panelist, my dear friends, is Mr. Harman Sidhu. Sidhu Saab is the founder of another NGO by the name of Arrive Safe. And it was because of his personal tragedy which struck him. He's an accident victim, and which damaged his spinal cord. So thereafter he faced the situation very with a brave heart, and today he's doing a lot of work for and a source of motivation for such people who are traffic victims. And he's helping a lot of the traffic accidental cases, and he's bringing the public interest litigations in terms of traffic. And so a lot of work he's doing in terms of Chandigarh for along with the traffic department. And my friends, all these three panelists who are herein, they are very passionate about the issue. That is number one. And they have been recognized not only in India but worldwide with various awards and with various felicitations and various meritorious certificates for doing the work that they are doing. So not taking much long, I'll request the panelists to take over from here. The seriatium that we'll follow is firstly Professor Seni will talk about his own experiences into the field and even the topic, and then thereafter Mr. Khatri will continue from therein, and then Harman Sidhu sir will talk about his own experiences into the field. So welcome, Professor Seni. The stage is all yours now.
Thank you, Professor Chaddha. And on the outset, I would like to compliment Professor Sanjeev Chaddha for taking up this very important issue for discussion in today's webinar. I would also like to welcome all the participants and my co-panelists. And without getting into much of rituals, because time is very limited, so without getting into much of rituals, I think so I should straight away get into my presentation. And I am supposed to finish my presentation in 15 to 20 minutes time. So in case, Chada Sahab, in case there's some interruption, I'm keeping my mobile just beside me. Do let me know. Otherwise, I suppose things should go on smoothly. Let me go to my presentation. Chada Sahab, is my screen visible? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Seni sir,
Okay,
Dr.
audio
Sahib.
video is okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Wonderful.
Okay. So, okay, let's get started. Let's first of all talk about some of the facts about the disability sector, so that we, we try to capture the disability scenario as such. Discrimination against disabled people is not just unethical; it's also unfair and a huge waste of human capital. सी भगवान हमें ये जीवन ह्यूमन जो ये मनुष्य जीवन एक बार ही देता है and unfortunately some people they develop some sort of disability or the other, and if that happens, so many a time we find there are a human capital that remains partially utilized. 73% of the Indian business houses they do not have any CSR policy, and they hardly ever employ a person with disability. We have also seen there was a survey conducted by National Center for Promotion of Employment for a disabled person. This survey was conducted in 1999, and the survey was conducted basically with a view to find out the percentage people employed by different organizations. And it was quite revealing that only 0.28% people were employed by private sector, 0.54% were employed by Indian public sector, and MNCs fared very poorly, and they employed only 0.05%. 0.05% of their manpower was basically with some sort of disability or the other. Many organizations already consider disability as part of their wider diversity, and they also believe that including person with disability in workforce that brings certain benefits to the business, and that's why they try to employ person with disability. Disabled people are considered to be, in fact, they are proved to be as productive and reliable as a non-disabled person. Then disabled person help organization in widening the pool of recruits, particularly in situation of skill shortage. And here I would like to lay emphasis in particularly those countries where we have shortages of skilled manpower, population is less, and in such like country, person with disability, if they are ignored, they are not put to productive use. So naturally, we won't be doing justice. So they can definitely help us meet the skill shortage to some extent. Then disabled people have better attendance record and fewer accidents. So I think so. On the whole, I would say they are better disciplined as compared to non-disabled person. Most disabled they require only minimal and basic adjustment at workplace. If we can bring in those minimum basic adjustments can be made, so their life can be made much better and they can work effectively. Being equal opportunity employer helps in improving staff morale and team development. This has also been experienced over the years. The people, other employees, wherein in an organization, if there are good number of people, person with disability, so other people working over there, their morale, it acts as a morale boosting, and they feel they possess better morale, and you'll find them working in teams. Then organization employing disabled person experience better retention. So it has also been seen, person with disability, they get into job with lot of after experiencing lot of difficulties, and once they get into a job, they usually do not change their jobs. So that way, their rate of retention and overall recruitment cost is much less. Then equal opportunity organizations are more accessible and appealing to all consumers and stakeholders. So from that point of view, I think so it makes a good business sense, and it appeals, such organizations, they are more appealing to the society at large. It helps improve public image of the organization. So organizations which employ a good number of persons with disability, they are definitely considered to be much better. Now, Professor Chadha has already told us about prevalence of disability in India. There are 2.68% with disability in our country as per census 2011. It comprises of 1.5 crore male and 1.18 crore female. Of course, one can always deliberate on authenticity of this data, but whatever data is available with us, now if you try to look into that data and try to read it between the line, then you'll find there are three major disability which constitute, major part of the disability. And the biggest disability in India is basically, that pertains to movement or orthopedic disability, and whatever be the total number, almost close to one-fifth of them. So they suffer from orthopedic disability or disability in movement. Almost 19% people, they have disability in hearing, and almost equal number they have disability in seeing. And there are 7.45% people who experience, who are with speech disability. And in fact, if you consider hearing and speech, which these two disabilities usually go hand in hand together, and the one who doesn't hear usually doesn't speak also. So if these two disabilities are taken together, so 18 plus 8, almost 26% person, in fact, it exceeds 26%. So this then emerges the biggest, the serious most and the biggest disability. So figures pertaining to other kind of disabilities, so they are shown over here. No time to really go into detail of that. So, as we all are aware, the first time an act was passed in 1995, Person with Disability Act, which stands amended in 2016. So, under PWD Act 1995, there were only 7 disabilities covered, and the present Act, Person of Rights of Person with Disability Act 2016, it now covers 21 disabilities. So that way, the this thing overall disability sector, that has really increased quite a lot now. The 21 disability which are covered under RPWD Act 9 2016 includes blindness, low vision, leprosy cured, hearing and speech impairment, locomotor disability, dwarfism, intellectual disability, mental illness, autism spectrum disorder, cerebral palsy, then muscular dystrophy, chronic neurological conditions, specific learning disability, multiple sclerosis, speech and language disability, thalassemia, hemophilia, then sickle cell disease, multiple disabilities including deaf blindness, acid attack victims, and Parkinson disease. So compared to earlier 7, now number is almost 3 times. And naturally, the incidence of disability in India is going to be much higher now when the census takes place. So we'll know exactly the total head count under these 21 disabilities. Now, with a view to mainstream person with disability, Government of India has launched, in fact, a number of schemes from time to time. And there was a scheme which was basically conceived in 1996 and it became operational from 1999 to year 2000. This scheme was known as Integrating Person with Disability in Technical and Vocational Education. In fact, I was part of this thing, basically conceiving this scheme at the national level, then giving it shape and finally implementing it. In fact, I was looking after this scheme in northern region in particular. Many a time I had the opportunity of nurturing this scheme at the national level. And the idea was, okay, let's try to make person with disability equal partner in technical and vocational education. And for that matter, 50 polytechnic across the country spread over 24 states and union territory, they were identified. And wherever these polytechnics were there under this particular scheme, so each polytechnic was assigned the target of admitting 25% with disability in 3-year engineering and technology program. So, polytechnic being 3-year program, that means in one polytechnic there could be as many as 25 into 3, 75% with disability getting benefit of engineering and technology program. In addition to that, the second component of this scheme was each polytechnic was supposed to train at least 100% with disability in variety of skills, which mean person with disability friendly skills, depending upon local market conditions. And the idea was to provide them 3 to 6 month vocational training and then help them getting some job or maybe self-employment. So these were the two components: formal program of 3-year duration, non-formal program of 3 to 6 month duration. And for these program, a lot of liberal financial assistance was provided by Government of India. And as I referred to earlier, I was looking after this scheme at regional and national level many a time. So over the past 18 years, means starting from 2000 and then up to 2018, we ended up providing engineering and technology skills to close to 10,000 person with disability, and more than 30,000 person with disability. They had the benefit of undergoing 3 to 6 month training programs. And these training programs were almost free for person with disability. In fact, they were being provided free hostel facility, boarding allowance, scholarship, uniform allowance, transport allowance, midday meal, toolkit, and many other concessions. And hostel was provided free of rent. In fact, there was an undertaking from the participating institution that they will not charge any kind of hostel fee from these people. Then beneficiaries included basically, people who took admission in 3 engineering polytechnic diploma. So there were more than 50 different type of programs available. Similarly, when we talk about short duration skill program, there were more than 100 different type of skill program which were made available to person with disability. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give you a little idea about this thing: institutional support available for person with disability. There are 4 national level institutions for the cause of person with disability. They are known as AYJ at Mumbai, Ali Aurjang National Institute for Hearing Handicapped at Mumbai, National Institute for Mentally Handicapped at Sikandrabad, National Institute for Visually Handicapped at Dehradun, and National Institute for Orthopedically Handicapped at Kolkata. In fact, all these institutions, they get covered under Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. And wherever one of these institutions exists, they would have extension center of the other 3 institutions. That's the kind of arrangement which exists. In addition to these 4 institutions, we have National Institute for Speech and Hearing at Trivandrum. In fact, this institute is now being converted into a university. Probably that will happen soon. We have National Institute for Speech and Hearing at Mysore University. Then universities for disabled have been set up at Chitrakoot and Lucknow. And now many other states, particularly Punjab, is also thinking of setting up a university now. And then we have this thing, a special engineering college for the deaf. There's a university called Kalaslingam University near Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu, and they have a special college for the deaf, engineering college for the deaf, something very unique. We have Ambedkar Institute for the Handicapped at Kanpur. I think so 3 or 4 different type of diploma programs are offered by them. Admission is made on all India basis. We have JSS Polytechnic, very reputed group in down south. So JSS Polytechnic near Mysore, they have a dedicated polytechnic for person with disability. We have Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Institute for Physically Handicapped at New Delhi, Swami Vivekananda National Institute for Rehabilitation Training and Research at Cuttack, and National Institute for Empowerment of Persons with Disability at Chennai. So these are some of the national level institutions. In addition to that, we have district disability rehabilitation center spread over all over the country. There are composite regional centers located in different states and union territories. Also, we have more than 20 vocational rehabilitation centers, and they do provide vocational training to persons with disability and also provide this thing, placement assistance. Then Government of India has established special employment exchanges for PWDs. There are some special ITIs. I know of one ITI in Sundarnagar in Himachal Pradesh. They run number of programs. Only this ITI is only for person with disability, and of course, countrywide. If we talk about, there are more than 5,000 NGOs basically trying to provide early education to person with disability. There are some other facilities like Government of India has made and various state government, they are trying to make Indian education inclusive education, and the facility of inclusive education exists in all aided and this thing government educational institutions. 5% reservation for person with disability exists, and no government or aided school can really refuse the admission to students with disability. 4,500 to 5,000 NGOs. I think so. Each NGO on an average admits 150 to 200 students, and if that be the scenario countrywide, if we talk about some, I think so 7 to 9 lakh students, they are getting benefit of studying in NGO, different NGO across the country. Then initiative for education of person with disability by Red Cross Society. I know particularly in Punjab, at every district headquarter, Red Cross Society, they are running special school for persons with disability. Indian Army again is doing a lot of work for the rehabilitation and education of persons with disability. And in every cantonment, you would invariably find an ASA school being run. And usually these schools are run by Army Wives Welfare Association. Then certain boards, they are giving certain exemptions in curriculum by some of these, some state board and also universities. They do exempt person with disability from appearing in third language, or some other concessions are given. Then at school education system, state government, they are making provision for appointment of resource teacher. Some of the state government are even employing this thing, sign language interpreter. So this is the kind of initiative which have been taken in place of in the area of education and vocational training of person with disability. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as I told you, I was associated with this centrally sponsored scheme, which is now more than 2 decades old. When we started implementing this scheme way back in year 2000, 2001, and students, they started completing 3-year diploma. So then I started getting some feedback from the educational institution. I got some feedback from Delhi College of Engineering, some of the polytechnics, and the feedback which we got was the person with disability, they do get admissions in different vocational program, educational program, and technical technology and engineering program. But when companies come for placement, these companies, if they do not come to know about the disability of the person, they tend to get selected. But when the documents are verified, and when the moment these companies, they come to know about the disability of a person, even a selected person gets rejected. So this is the feedback which I got, and based on that feedback, then I started thinking over how do we really help such person with disability who are qualified, who are capable of performing variety of jobs. So then the idea which struck to me was It's just like we have placement fair, job fair in different educational institutions. So my idea was, why can't we have dedicated special job fair only for person with disability? And in such like job fair, we invite potential employers, and we also bring them in interaction with large number of qualified person with disability. And if that kind of interaction can really take place, then maybe large number of person with disability, they'll get employment opportunities. So I kept on toying with this idea for about 2 3 years. Nothing happened. Thousands of letters I had written, and finally, it so happened after some 3 years of struggle, we succeeded in getting one company in one of the job fair, and that's how the beginning was made in year 2000. So basically, the whole process of empowering person with disability, so far as employment is concerned. So it was basically conceiving that problem and then thinking of what could be the solution, and if that solution really helps, so we further work on that strategy and we try to further this thing, build capacity, and we try to execute such program. If that can happen, so that can really benefit large number of person with disability. So I am of the firm belief, when we talk of person with disability, you see, this occasional charities and all, they do not really help. What really helps is we make a person stand on one's own feet, provide them training, provide them employment, make them get into some sort of self-employment. To my mind, that's the real empowerment. Otherwise, these occasional, distributing sweets, giving T-shirt, caps, and all, that doesn't really help. And I personally feel that's a cruel joke with person with disability. We need to empower them by way of providing them education, vocational training, employment, and self-employment. That's the real empowerment. So, ladies and gentlemen, over the years we improved upon our this thing, the concept of empowering the person with disability. And what happened exactly, getting into this task was indeed very difficult. I wrote to thousands of company, and initial responses were not at all encouraging, but I didn't feel defeated. So ultimately, we made a breakthrough in 2010, and 2010 we organized three small job fairs, with the help of which we could place 43% with disability in variety of organization in and around Chandigarh. Then figure pertaining to 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, they are all reflected over here. So initial 7 years, we could place 602. Data pertaining to 2018, that's not included here, but we did place close to 150% with disability in variety of organization in and around Chandigarh. So now when I look back, 8 years, 800 and 750% with disability, they got placement in different organizations. That provides a lot of satisfaction. Empowered major organization which responded to our call for inviting them for recruiting person with disability. They included IBM, Tech Mahindra, Tata Indicom, Spanco, then Jubilant Food. We had Fortis Healthcare. They participated in a number of our job fair. Then Qatar Valves, KC Group of Institutions, IBM Global Process Services, Gillard Electronics at Mohali, Usha Martin, Devyani International, Vishal Mega Mart, Lemon Tree, Future Group, and then Serco, PepsiCo, International Tractor, Competent Synergy, BlackBerry, Hotel Windsmoot, also small, this thing, firms like this thing, Being Human sales outlet at Chandigarh, or Reliance Retail, and many small hotels. They came forward and they employed large number of persons with disability. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is what I think. So, given 15 to 20 minutes time, I should not be, speaking too much about that. But I once again would like to emphasize on this thing. If we want to empower person with disability, if we want them to lead a dignified life, so let's not go for this thing occasional help. Let's try to help them in getting educated, providing them vocational training, and help them in getting employment. Doesn't matter whether it is government employment, private, or self employment even. So, and I'm sure all of us are capable of contributing something, doing something for person with disability. So with these words, I think so I need to stop my presentation. Here are some of the visuals of our, job fairs which we organized. And in fact, I developed linkages with this thing CII, then Vocational Rehabilitation Center, some of the NGOs, and large number of corporates around. And these are some of the visuals of this thing, different variety of job fairs which we organize from time to time. So, Cheta Sahab, I think so I need to stop here. I'll
Right.
stop my presentation, and maybe we can take up the questions
Later.
later. Okay?
Right.
So, I
Sunny,
think.
for comprehensive insight into the issues related to the differently abled special persons, and I must salute you for your efforts for bringing about roughly around 1,000 employments with lot of your personal efforts into this regard. So I think a lot of appreciation from my side and from the entire viewer side should go to you, and will request you to keep up the good work. And on this, I request the second speaker of the day, Mr. Niranjan Khatri, to take over from here and share his own experiences in this domain, what his works were while he was at ITC and what he's doing as such. Mr. Khatri, the stage is all yours now. Welcome, Khatri Saab.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yeah, audible, sir.
Satyakal, Namaste, Adab. It's a terrible thing to see and have no vision. This is a quotation of Helen Keller, and I think it was pertinent to me 32 years back because I could not see the issues of the social arena when I was in Port Blair. But then, thanks to the local administration, they nudged me into sustainable development. And as you all might be aware, the sustainable development is not just about focusing on environment, but also economics and social dimension. And years back, I used to think that the orphan boys and girls were the weakest stakeholders, and I started a skilling initiative for them way back in 1989. And then I moved to mainland, and I was in headquarters at IHRDI Hotels, Gurgaon, and we scaled up the skilling activity in various hotels. Then in 2005, I discovered that the weakest stakeholders are people with disabilities. So I convinced my organization to employ people with disabilities. And I must confess, our knowledge was zero that time. So we took baby steps in trying to understand the various issues and the various nuances and facets of disability. So I traveled across the country to learn from NGOs and other organizations of how they had implemented it. And then came back to headquarters, and we started. The first lady whom we employed was a girl with cerebral palsy. We put her in our hotel in Rajasthan, and her task was to give cleaning forms to the staff. And we wanted to ensure that our internal customers were happy in the interaction with the person with disabilities. So after a month, we got a feedback that there was no issues at all with her. So then we brought this initiative to Delhi, and we got a lady who speaks good English like you and me. And we thought we put her in our telephone department to work in the telephone exchange. But we could not do that because we had to negotiate 15 steps to reach the telephone room. So we changed our plan and we put her in the engineering department, which was aligned with the staff entrance, staff toilet, and staff cafeteria, which could move around independently in her wheelchair. So this made us to realize that since our hotels were old, our hotels were not built with universal design principles. So in order to rectify this challenge that we had in our existing hotels, we did access audit in all our hotels, and we removed a lot of physical barriers by 85%. Some of you might ask, why?
Mr. Khatri, sorry to disturb you. May I request you to speak a little louder?
Okay, fine. I'll increase,
please. Thank you.
The volume also. Is it better now?
Definitely. Much better.
Thank you. So we did access audit of all our hotels to rectify the shortcomings, which were not included 35 years back. Most of our hotels are 30, 35 years old. And we could rectify only 85% of the disabilities, physical disabilities of our hotels. because I'm not going to break a pillar to make it barrier free. And then since we were constructing a lot of hotels, we decided that all our hotels are going to be universal in design by design intent from project stages. So post 2008, we have opened about 8 or 9 hotels. And the first hotel with universal design is the ITC Gardenia in Bangalore. And it got the presidential award being the first hotel in the country with universal design. And this third initiative we took was in Bangalore, in ITC Windsor Manor. We employed a hearing and speech impaired boy to work on in the reservation office. We had a very peculiar problem those days in 2005 that the 3 girls were busy taking reservations but not loading it on the computer. Therefore, the front office manager did not know how many rooms to book or not to book at the end of the day. So when we employed this hearing and speech impaired boy, he was computer savvy. The 3 girls will hand over the reservation voucher to him. He would load it, and by 6 o'clock, he'll tell the front office manager, "Look, you can take 10 more rooms or don't take any more rooms." And thanks to him, we increased our revenue by 60 lakh per annum because of this particular information. And then in the same hotel in Bangalore, we employed 2 visually impaired people in laundry. And what we did was we paired them with so-called able people to work on the laundry calendaring machine. It's a huge machine. It's like a gannega juice machine with a width of about 10 or 12 feet and rollers in it. So 2 guys stand on one side to put the bedsheet in, and the other 2 guys take it out from the other side, and they fold it and keep it. So then we realized, as a matter of fact, the housekeeper realized that the person with visual impairment would not disappear for smoking bidi or gossiping and all that, as opposed to guys like me who will disappear for gossiping here and there. So the productivity increased, and therefore the numbers increased from 1 to 27 in that hotel in a span of 3 months. And then our numbers went up to 300, but the numbers don't excite me in view of the larger problem. So we said, how do we influence other companies and other hotel chains to do it? So one was wary of reaching out to others because they could say, you do it yourself, why are you telling us? So we didn't do that. One of the difficulties we had when we started this initiative was there were no books to refer to. And nobody was sharing the nuts and bolts of how to go about doing it creatively. And I told my HR manager, this is not a CSR activity. This is a regular activity. No sympathy for people with disabilities, only empathy. Because when you empathize, you do the right thing. When you sympathize, you shed the crocodile tear. And that's good to solve the water problem, but not the problems of the people with disabilities. So we wrote 2 books on this subject, how to employ people with disabilities. 12 pages only. It's available in the public domain. A 6 pages picture and 6 pages of write-up. You'll wonder why only 6 pages, because today people don't have an appetite to read. So we're very sharp in our communication of what companies can do. And although the examples were that of hotels, but a lot of other hotels picked up and inferred from it and applied these concepts to other industries. Then we said it's important that we also develop an open source document of universal design books. So we wrote another book called Universal Design Book, which is also there on the website. It became so popular that the Indian Railways took 1,500 copies. The delegation came from Philippines just to understand how a hotel chain has implemented this very elegantly with dignity. And they also took this book. They took about 200 copies of this book to Philippines. And then I got an invitation from Accenture to talk to the HR managers in Bangalore to demystify the subjects. And I shared with them our case study, and I showed them the 2 books that we have written. And the intent of putting these things on the website was very clear, that we have to demystify the subject and give knowledge which is specific, usable, so that others don't take the same amount of time that we took. The whole idea is not to reinvent the wheel. And you'll be happy to know that this lady from Accenture, she went to Hong Kong to sensitize people in Hong Kong how to employ people with disabilities. And the question often raised in these interactions is that, oh, but there are no books. So immediately she told him, please download it from so-and-so website. And a similar thing happened in Hyderabad also, when the Secretary Tourism was talking to the general managers of all the hotels in Hyderabad. and he requested them to employ people with disabilities. And when they raised the question of there's no books available, he whispered something in the secretary's ears. She came back with the hard copies of these books downloaded from the website. Uh, the other initiative that we started when I was there in Gurgaon was I reached out to about 11 BPOs in Gurgaon and requested them to give 8 feet by 8 feet space in their canteen so that people with disabilities can set up a small kiosk to sell chips, snacks, etc., etc. So that was a good experience to indicate to the NGOs that please don't only look for jobs. It's very difficult to get jobs in the corporate sector, more so in the current conditions. So how do we make businessmen out of them so that they become taxpayers of tomorrow? That's the kind of ambition that we should have. And that seems to be working, although in a very small scale. But when the ecosystem is set right, then I think this will become a little better. Um, Another initiative that I started for rural application was that there's an organization called IDE in Delhi, International Development Enterprise, and they used to make drip irrigation which cost 150 rupees. So I introduced IDE with NAB in Delhi, and they tried to teach these girls how to make drip irrigation so that they don't have to go out to work and they could sell it. But I must be very frank, certain initiatives just didn't work out because organizations didn't take it forward. But good to learn from these initiatives. In 1914, I moved out of Delhi and came to Bangalore and started my own organization. In 2016, I was invited to take a session for a person with disabilities in Koppal district in Karnataka. I was there for 2 days. And the session was for the hearing and speech impaired people. I conducted it through the help of a sign language translator. And then I told the NGO that, look, one of the reasons why we have so many disabled people is that I think our nutritional profile of most people in the country is very, very poor. As a matter of fact, as per data, 60% of the people are malnourished in this country. And if a woman is malnourished, she is bound to give birth to a cognitively impaired child or a child with disabilities. So at least let's try and address proactively how to ensure that children are not born with disabilities. I'm sure there are other reasons also for disability, but if this particular aspect can be worked on, and we need data on this, how many children are born with defects because of malnutrition. So I told this NGO that, Government of India cannot do everything. Let's start an idea which is cost effective, replicable and scalable. So we started something called Bank of Nutrition. And we nurtured 5 kind of saplings. Moringa or drumstick, as you know, is a superfood. Banana, papaya, lime, and amla. So let's assume that Dr. Saini is a poor person living in a hut. He gets 5 of these saplings and he nurtures it. And after about 4 to 14 months' time, they'll have access to all these superfoods, and that'll help in their nutritional profile. So the nutrition is a foundational issue that need to be looked at. And from one village, it spread to about 5 villages, and then there was a hard stop. There was no development at all. Then this year, I found another NGO partner in Bangalore who teaches poor children in Karnataka and in Tamil Nadu, and is working in 35 villages. So I told him, look, Paritosh, please give experiential learning to kids and not just sit in the class and learn. So he said, what do I do? I said, look, this is a bank of nutrition. You need to start in your 35 villages where the kids will dig a hole and their brothers, sisters will also take care of it. The parents will also be involved. He was very proactive. He not only involved the whole family, but he involved the panchayat also. And the panchayat lady gave him a piece of land to park the saplings before they were planted. And now he's doing a competition between the villages to ensure that the survival rate is high, because it's very easy to plant saplings, but very difficult to keep it alive. Now, having done this, and I always believe in a low-cost strategy with a high returns. So I network with very diverse stakeholders. So one of the ladies who got a 2-acre farm in Tamil Nadu, I requested her, can you give me 500 square feet space in your farmland to grow these saplings? So we have to create banks in every place so that these saplings can be planted before the onset of monsoon And when you plant it before the onset of monsoon, then the survival rate is very high. So she was very kind, and she has given us 500 square feet of space. And not only that, she's put the sapling, her employees are nurturing it, and she's gone one step ahead and influenced her friend in Tumkur, and she has offered us 3 acres of land. So now I've got a taste of, begging, not for money, begging for land, which I don't take, but I tell them to leverage their land optimally and give it. So the distribution is being done by this NGO, and it's a partnership between people without MOU, without anything. It's just your word of mouth. You say yes, we move on. So that is happening now. So the word has got around, and I'm in the process of working with a very large NGO with a footprint in 23 states. And I've had 2, 3 dialogues with them, and they are keen to take this across the country. So until this happens, I'm not going to reveal the name of this organization. Let things happen on the ground. It's always good to talk after the action has been done. So the latest initiative that I've started is called TCS. No, not Tata Consultancy Services. TCS is Tender Coconut Shell. So about 17, 18 days back, I went to buy 2 tender coconut shell, and I took my own tiffin. I didn't want to consume it there. And then I found the place was littered with these empty shells. So I said, oh, I am part of the problem. So how do I ensure that my 2 coconut shells do not lie over there? So I told him to increase the size of the mouth of the coconut shell and chop it at the bottom so that I could keep it without tilting on the floor. Made a small hole at the bottom so that when I plant a sapling there, in case I have overwatered, the water comes out, and put these saplings in my house. And then I took a picture. I'm part of the management committee of my housing complex, and now we are going to put it up in our housing complex. But even this is not good enough. I've shared this idea, I think, on the Sarthak group also, and with many other groups. And this is an example of how do you create a triple bottom line. That means if you are in business, you must not only focus on the economics, but you have to focus on the environmental and social issues. Without merging all the 3, we will not be conducting our business responsibly. So this, okay. And when I interacted with the vendor, I don't know Kannada, and he was speaking Kannada. I was having a problem explaining to him to cut it and make the mouth larger, etc., etc. And I was lucky, and just at that point of time, a traffic cop came on his bike, and he found me struggling, trying to make him explain. And since he could speak Kannada, he translated what I wanted, and the work was done very quickly. Then I told this this vendor that you must suggest this to Dr. Saini, Dr. Chaddha. If they come, out of 10 people, if two people also take every day, then we are removing X number of this so-called lavaris at TCS from the road. And I also paid him 5 rupees extra for the processing that he did, and his eyes lit up. So the point that I'm trying to make is now, how does some NGO working wherever they may be, maybe in the south, north, wherever it's readily available, access this, okay, and then keep it ready in 3 forms. So suppose Dr. Saini wants only the empty ones. He said, I'm going to put my own plant and my own mud. He gets it for 20 rupees, right? That empty shell. And Dr. Chaddha wants with sapling, then he is charged 300 rupees. So now if Dr. Chaddha has been invited to my house, he might bring normally a bouquet for me. A bouquet costs between 1,000 to 2,000 rupees. Whereas if he brings this, then he's giving me a dynamic gift as opposed to the bouquet, which is a static gift. After 48 hours, I'll forget Dr. Chaddha, right? And that bouquet is also gone. But when I have the sapling with me, it's lying in my room. Every day I'll remember Dr. Chaddha. So we have to think innovatively and create a scale. Now, I'm not expecting the people with mobilities to do this selling. So we should have a system like a factory. So if I'm making biscuits, somebody is a wholesaler and somebody is a distributor, right? And today with WhatsApp technology, maybe you can do a direct sale also. So I'm just giving illustrative ideas of how it can be expanded in a very short span of time. And this will link up with Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, because Government of India is struggling to clean up our cities. And our country It's called the dirtiest country in the world as per India today, and as per economic. There's a magazine called Economics, and I feel very ashamed when I see these kind of headlines. So, since time is limited, I'd like to end by saying that many times we sit in the car and our window is slightly open, and you'll find there's a fly inside, and the fly is trying to struggle to leave the car, and it keeps on hitting on the glass because nature has not taught it to differentiate between opaqueness and transparency. Somewhere on a global scale, human beings are also like the fly because we have a lot of challenges. These solutions are there only 2 inch above, but they are still stuck with the way they are doing things. So I hope we'll not be the fly and be more creative than what we are today. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Khatri, for such an interesting and I would say quite innovative talk on what you're doing, and especially this universal designing of the ITC hotels, and thereafter, helping them get the jobs and placements, and thereafter now working for the environmental aspects. This is not only inspiring to us, rather, it's given us wonderful ideas of what as an individuals we can do. Hats off to you, sir, and keep up the good effort.
Thank
Now,
you.
yeah. Now I request the third panelist of the day, Mr. Harman Singh Sidhu, to speak about his own experiences. He is doing a wonderful job here in Chandigarh, and I think he is the one who has kept through the process of law certain rules, regulations which we still find in Chandigarh. He is one of those persons who's helping the management of traffic aspects also, and people follow the rules, and so that Chandigarh is now a city which is very well known for traffic compliance and management. Welcome, Sidhu Saab, and the stage is all yours, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Chaddha, and a very good afternoon to the panelists and all my fellow friends. So I would rather like to compare the Sustainable Development Goals and disability, something that I got nearly 25 years back. So I would say I've lived half of my life in this wheelchair after getting a spinal cord injury way back in October 1996. So probably that was the time when I got the tag of being visibly disabled. But otherwise, if we see, let's say an able-bodied person or ABC, anybody on the lovely planet Earth, we all have some kind of challenges. So we all are able and disabled in some manner or the other. So a person with, let's say, a physical disability or something to do with eyes or ears, so they can be tagged or flagged more easily. So they're normally termed, they can be given, any kind of names, that would be disabled or differently abled or Divyang as being termed nowadays. But I think, like, as a person who has lived in this wheelchair for nearly half of my life, getting different kind of tags doesn't really make any difference to me, right? Because there's, as a point that people mock at. So the mockery, or it's more like a game. I would just like to give certain examples so that you can feel how you can better understand how we people feel when we are traveling around. So Sustainable Development Goals, yes, that's a very ambitious thing, and if even half of what is planned is being done can be achieved, Earth would be a better place to live at. But there are two things. One is having acts and rules in place, and second, getting them implemented. And with our experience of working in the field of road safety and transportation, I've seen that the second part of getting things implemented is even more challenging than having a new rule or an act in place. So we have our own good and bad experiences at that. As earlier Mr. Sani was pointing out that it's thousands of letters and still fewer people were coming up with jobs for people with disabilities. So if we see the previous year and the current time when we are going through these COVID days, our primary issue, which is disability due to whatever physical form we are in, availability of, let's say, wheelchairs, their maintenance, and other such routine things that we need, they are all nearly kind of disappeared. So putting us once back into the back seat. So this is something which we cannot expect the society to focus on this thing at the moment, but it's just that it's one of the additional challenges that we feel and we face every other day. And I would also like to give the example of how our infrastructure currently is. I would talk about the Honorable Supreme Court, the campus and the building. I've been going there since the year 2014 because I've been fighting a PIL for getting some liquor shops moved from the highways. They were moved for some time and they're back on the highways and we're back in the court again. So it's just like you can say a game on. But unfortunately, even in the campus of the Supreme Court, we do not have designated parking facility. It is inside the campus, but a visitor is not allowed there. So there are no designated bus stops or road crossings. There is zero information on the Supreme Court website. The gate pass counter is not as per the standards. The most shocking part was that there is no ramp when you have to get into the courtroom, except for courtroom number 1, which is the courtroom of the Honorable Chief Justice of India. And a ramp to lift, there is still accessibility issue. And to top it up, no space for wheelchairs inside the courtrooms. And this is my own personal experience. So as I tried to enter the courtroom, the marshal of the court, they said like, you're not allowed inside the room, the courtroom, because one has to stand up and go inside. It's against the dignity of the court if you sit and move in. So it just, why I'm giving example of the Supreme Court, that this is something which is happening at the top of the chain. So if we see these kind of things happening, so we cannot expect a dental hospital in Sector 25 to have a proper lift. I'm giving the example of the dental hospital because I've been there a couple of times, and the lift is smaller than the volume of a normal wheelchair. So a wheelchair cannot be accommodated in the lift of a hospital. So seeing this, we cannot really expect that other buildings or the infrastructure would be at par. And unfortunately, a lot of new infrastructure which is coming up still is lacking on these kind of audits. So I completely appreciate the work being put in by Mr. Saini and Mr. Khatri in this field, but a lot of people, they need to join hands and work even harder on this, because still proper audit is not done, and we don't start respecting each other in this manner. Just the road accidents part, I'm just talking about this because a huge army or number of people are coming every year. You find like hundreds of thousands of people with disabilities, joining in, because more than 1.5 lakh people die in road accidents every year in India, which is the highest in the world, unfortunately. And nearly 4 times more is the people who are getting disabled in some manner or the other. So nearly 6 lakh people getting disabled. So that's a huge number. And most of them, they are in the most productive age of their life. So while they have to pay back to the society what they have got, so they get into this kind of a situation and they have to relearn the whole thing and restart life. So that's my personal experience, and I'm sure that all the esteemed members here, they would do their bit or more to ensure that at least the environment around them is more accessible to people with disabilities. Because unfortunately, if we move around, a lot of time I have personally heard people saying, what are you doing here? So if you ask, like, why this question, this like you are expected to be sitting back home. So those kind of liberties, which a common person, a person who is physically able, so we also should get the same facilities, because there's no difference. We are just, God has created us equal, and that's how nature is. So I would like to rather keep it brief so that we can catch up with time. So over to you, Dr. Chaddha. I'm sorry for keeping it brief.
Thank you so much, Sidhu Saab. And everything came from your heart, and feels very passionate about certain issues. And I wish we could be more sensitive to the issues around, and then do our bit, as you rightly said. So now I think we have some time, and maybe we can go for some questions also if they are around. So if somebody wants to raise any question or query, because we still have around 15 to 20 minutes to go, so I think that can be answered by the honorable panelist members. Yeah, any query? Okay, so I would like to ask Saini Saab, that, sir, what else can be done in this regard? Because see, you've done a lot of work on vocational education, and you've done work on placements also. How can you be further, the skilling can be further improved to that level, so that, as Mr. Khatri also talked about, I mean, rather than giving them fish, how can we teach them fishing, so that they can take care of themselves and move from from somebody who's dependent economically also and socially also. What else can be done in this regard? Because time was limited, I think you stopped yourself. Ji, Sani Sab. Yeah, kindly unmute yourself. Yeah, Professor Sani, you are muted. Kindly unmute yourself. Dr. Sani, you are muted. Kindly unmute yourself. Okay, so till the time he joins, I'll request Khatri Saab to take up this call. What else can be done in this regard to improve upon the skills, maybe not formal education, but skills of the participants, the skills of the differently able people, so that they can be okay.
Khatri sir, sorry, it took me a little time, getting unmuted. There was some technical problem. Okay. I think the question which you have raised is indeed very relevant. You see, I personally believe in this thing. In learning and earning, they are positively correlated. Okay? The more you learn, the better chances of yours getting into some good job or self-employment or employment. Okay? So we need to basically, if we have to build capacity and if we have to provide a dignified life to person with disability, I think so we need to really strengthen our education system for person with disability. Now, I gave you some statistics with regard to this thing, employment of persons with disability in private sector, public sector, in government, etc. Similarly, if you try to find out the number of students with disability in inclusive education system, that scenario is very, very discouraging. And now, in the name of inclusive education for students with disability, all state governments, they are intending to make the Indian education system inclusive, but the infrastructure is so poor. The parents of students with disability, they are the one who know the pains of inclusion in Indian education system, and that's where interventions are required. Now, if we have to provide inclusive education to students with disability, adequate infrastructure need to be created, resource teachers need to be appointed, sign language interpreter need to be appointed. So otherwise, simply having, like in some of the state government, let me not name the state as such, appointing one resource teacher in one block, and that block may have maybe dozens of schools. Each school will have classes from entry level to 12th standard, and then each class will also have some sections. So look to the number of student a resource teacher has to deal, and then there are different subjects. Okay, so this concept of providing one resource teacher in a block or a district is grossly inadequate. And if we really want to promote inclusive education for students with disability, so naturally we need to improve a lot. Now, why did I raise this question with regard to education of the student with disability? You go to any educational institute, including Delhi University, which is such a premium university. So seats meant for students with disability, they by and large remain unutilized. Okay. So these seats remain unutilized. Okay, you have provided 5% reservation, but this reservation system would prove to be inadequate because the seats just do not get filled up, and the feeder system, which is basically our primary school, middle school, and high school, because we do not have adequate number of students in school education system, we do not get all the seats meant for PWDs filled up, and they remain by and large unutilized, and schemes remain only on paper. So the specific question which you raised, what need to be really done? So to my mind, we need to really concentrate on improving the educational facility, vocational training facility, and once there are adequate number of persons with disability available, then thereafter they can definitely get into employment, self-employment, and variety of other professions. So in case there are some specific questions, so
Yeah,
I can take up that.
thank you. Yeah, there's one question from Dr. G.R. Saibi. He wants to know that how the perception of the society towards the differently abled or Divyang people could be changed so that they can feel more secure. I think Mr. Khatri can take up this call, and Professor Saini can supplement.
Thank you, Dr. Chaddha. But before I come to your question, I'd like to continue with what Dr. Sani said. So I'll give some macro inputs in order to bring about disruptive change, because whatever we are doing, and I also feel very frustrated that we are working in a very incremental fashion. So my first question is, how do we build up the capacity of the IAS officers so that when they join IAS and they go to the Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute in Mussoorie, they are given input in the subject. And after 10 years, they're likely to forget the inputs that they got 10 years back. They must come for a refresher course and understand the nuances of disability from a policy perspective. Because if you have people who have got sensitized at that age, then they'll bring about some positive change in whichever state or whichever field they are in. And there's a gap in this particular area, number one. Number two, what can be done? Prime Minister is very rightly saying that digital India, digital India. So in line with Digital India campaign and implementation, all the government websites must be accessible. Today, they are not accessible. So accessible website must be taken up on a mission mode during this period of pandemic, because the people with disabilities are not able to move around anyway, and at least they should have access to information and learning. Then it's very important to understand that Most of the people with disabilities are in rural India and they haven't gone to school, but that doesn't mean that they cannot be employed productively. And for this to be rectified, we need to do job mapping. One of the things which I did when I was in ITC hotels was I was dealing with some agricultural companies, and I told them that, look, when harvesting takes place, I see a lot of work happens in terms of segregating the good tomatoes from bad tomatoes, etc., etc. So if X number of people can be taught what is the quality that is required, this repetitive job can be done by them. I'm just giving you one example. And the other important thing that we need to do is that the HR managers in all institutes where HR is taught, whether it is the MBAs or ordinary college, they must have a session on disability so that they get sensitized. And when they join as HR manager of various organizations, they don't treat the subject as a CSR issue, but as a mainstream employment issue. So if we can bring about this kind of focused inputs to different stakeholders, then I think the next 5 years we'll be able to make significant changes. I'm so happy that when the Prime Minister came to power in 2014, we had a target of 22 gigawatt for renewable energy. He changed the rules of the game and he said we will have 175 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2022. So if we can have that kind of vision for renewable energy, I think the task here is much, much smaller and it can be done provided all the stakeholders are brought on the same page. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Now coming on to the question what Dr. Saibi raised was how can the perception of people be changed? Because as I said initially also, somehow our media is also a culprit to this aspect. Both the print, the electronic media, also the movies and others. Somehow, and Mr. Sidhu also felt, and I was feeling, he was speaking from his heart, this mocking things and then talking about sympathy and not empathy. Do you think there's a way around how this behavioral change can be brought about? The
Oh, yeah.
perception of people?
I'll share.
Ji.
Today with social media, I'm finding a lot of good messages on disabilities also. Some time back, a company showed a girl who paints with her toes. That was featured by that company, and few other companies are doing it. So, how do we reach out to these corporate sectors and even the film fraternity to make out a series of good examples of people with disabilities doing good work? And there are so many examples of that. If those can be converted into small videos of 30 seconds or 1 minute, and it can be forwarded, and we can change the mindsets of people. It's just a question of application of mind. We have the resources, we're not using our resources innovatively.
Right. Thank you, Khatri Sahab. Sidhu Sahab, would you like to add upon, because it is actually you who have felt, because you've seen both the worlds. While as a somehow, fully fit person, I can see still you're very fit. And, somebody then whose world was rattled because of that unfortunate accident. And you've seen the changes also. Now, what's your take on this? How would you think, the perception can be changed and the behavioral aspect?
See, I think we still are a very beautiful world that a lot of people, they mock, but at the same time, there are some wonderful people that you can never forget who are always there doing their bit. I'll give you the example of Dr. Professor Anil Monga of Department of Police Administration in the Punjab University. I took an admission there, and the department's building was on the first floor, and there was no lift, so I could not, continue with the course. The next year, so I got a call from the professor saying that we have shifted our department to the ground floor, so now you can come and join the classes. That was something which was so inspirational and touching, that if we have some more people like this, and I'm sure personalities with this kind of positive vision, they themselves are able to, influence a lot more. So that way, as Mr. Khatri was saying, that's a very mass exercise of making videos, and that's a very powerful way of reaching out to most. maximum number of people at a given point of time. At the same time, we can just, make these small changes. As if we meet some good person, we as, the persons who have benefited out of it, we should highlight the good that, we got from the society. So it just, binds us even closer. So that's my feeling about it.
Right. Thank you.
So, Chaddha sir,
Sir.
in addition to what our other panelists have suggested, I would suggest that the country must go for creating a reservoir of best practices in the area of disability. These best practices may be collected, compiled from world over, and thereafter, with the help of press and electronic media, we should try to popularize and we should try to replicate those best practices within our country.
Right.
And change of attitude, change of mindset is something which is, which takes decades together. Nothing is going to happen overnightly. But if we start working in that direction slowly and slowly, I'm sure the mindset of the people will change. It has undergone some changes over the years, but still lot many more things need to be done. So let's try to find out the best practices from world over. Let's try to bring them to India and make them happen here in India. That should make some difference.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Your
There is
permission.
a question, from one of the viewers, that whether this new education policy that has come up, do you think this will be a game changer, especially with regard to the higher education for the PWDs? Yeah, any panelist may take up the call.
Well, I think so. It's too early to really comment upon this thing. Let the new education policy really get implemented. So I would only say intentions are good. Nothing wrong with the intentions of the government. But the problem is when it comes to action level, that's where we are really lacking. And I would once again go back to the same thing. Unless you strengthen your primary, secondary, and high school education, so you won't have adequate number of people with disability in higher education in India.
Sir,
And these provisions would remain largely underutilized.
just to take forward from here, what Professor Sani is talking about, and today is the time of technology. Can't we develop such an app wherein the entire, this population can be listed on that app, and it could be mapped like Khatri Saab was also talking about, some kind of a mapping could be done wherein the number of seats available and the number of people, they could be mapped against each other, so that at least, if not much, that information could be done. I mean, I'm just thinking about it, but do you think this could be done? Professor Sani and Mr. Khatri?
You see, so far as mapping is concerned, it's only a matter of this thing, digging out this information. Otherwise, the number of seats available, say, in different educational institutions, so that's known to the policy formulator. It may not be known to the parents of student with disability. Finding out that information is not a problem. The real problems lies in utilization of these available seats, which by and large go they remain vacant only.
I would like.
And I have also seen many a time, some other people who do not really deserve to get into the disability because of by hooks and crooks. Somehow they tend to manage those, that they tend to utilize that reserved quota for their own benefit. That has also been noticed. So unless we strengthen our school education system, so higher education facilities available for students with disability, they would remain grossly underutilized.
Right. Thank you, Professor Sani. I think Mr. Khatri wanted to say something.
Yeah, I want to share a story of DPS School North in Bangalore. I gave them inputs in 2012 on how to mainstream the school, and you'll be happy to know that the school is perhaps the only school, I may be wrong, which is inducting children with different kinds of disabilities, and they have 30 teachers trained to handle them. I think we need more examples of this in the country.
Mhm.
That's
Thank
very
you, sir. Mr. Chattopadhyay has a very, very relevant suggestion that if the principals of the polytechnics, the schools, general, the schools which are all inclusive, and engineering colleges, etc., plus the, people, the heads of Panchayati Raj institutions, municipal bodies, if they are aware and sensitized to the PWDs, he says the results could be much better in terms of implementation. Professor, you agree with this because you've been in this position.
Uh, you want me to respond to this question?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. See, the problem arises, uh, there are policies in place, but then when we talk of heads of the institution not being aware of this thing, who prevents them from being aware about the disability? Problem arises, most of the time these people simply avoid getting deep into the disability issues. I have visited many educational institutions. You go and ask them, are you aware of inclusive education policy? Are you an equal employment opportunity? The fellow may not have heard of this vocabulary at all, right? So that's where the problem really arises. So I think so. Again, important role for press and electronic media, and maybe some provision can be made in annual confidential report also. Just like you do lot many, you attend to election work, you attend to census work, you attend to disability work also. Maybe some weightage can be given to it. So little bit of this thing, uh, be it by coercive measure or something. So people need to be, they need to be made, they need to understand the disability scenario, and slowly, I think so, this attitude toward disability, I'm sure it's going to improve, but it's going to take time.
Right. Thank you. So I think I'll just take one more minute because I have a video which I wanted to show because whatever Mr. Khatri has talked about, and Professor Sani and Sidhu Saab, generally it was said that the productivity does not suffer at all, or it in the long run for repetitive tasks the productivity is not suffering as a PWD is doing the work. So I happen to get this video on YouTube, which I would like all of you to see. It's just a 1.5 minute video, and especially it's in the domain of hotel management itself. How a visually challenged person. I mean, and you just see the skills that he shows. Please. Yeah, let's request Hanya to. Yeah. So, friends, you just saw, how the motor skills the person was demonstrating, even when he's a visually handicapped, visually, the person with infringement in terms of visually challenged person, but uh, generally we have this excuse in mind that he will not be able to carry it out. But just see the how the other faculties was doing, and with such a sharp weapon, with such a sharp as big as a knife, he was able to produce things as such. So I think this is the answer that is therein. So friends, we come to an end, and we had a great discussion on the entire thing. But this one video tells us everything. The 100 words of speaking, and then this one word of video tells us, what actually can be done and achieved. So we have number of deliverables and number of outcomes which comes by that. Yes, there are challenges which are involved, maybe because of some God's plan. Some senses are missing, but maybe over a period of time, some other senses they come and commensurate us with those senses which are deficit as such. So in this case, if somebody is visually deprived, sense of smell or sense of touch becomes much more stronger. So the idea is that the challenges could be there in terms of accessibility, in terms of health aspects, in terms of education aspects, in terms of the placement aspects, employment, in terms of the technical skills also. But these challenges can only be fought. These challenges can only be bridged or mitigated by way of the entire community coming together, which as Professor Sani and Khatri Sahab and Sidhu Sahab also talked about, that things are getting better in terms of the technology, media also. People are now empathetic. So on our part, on the part of citizens of this country and the world citizens, Vasudevaya Kutumbakam, we have to treat them as equals. So then only inclusiveness part has to be brought about. Otherwise, treating them with any kind of, bechara feeling, which I think nobody likes that kind of a feeling. Not even an animal likes that kind of a feeling. What to talk about a human being as such. So that has to be minimized, and that has to be got. Somehow we have to sensitize ourselves and to our families. And once it is done, then the things could be much better, and it is improving as such. So I really thank the three panelists of today, Professor.
Just
Yeah,
1 minute I would like to take.
Sanjeev.
At times what happens, at times we tend to over generalize the things, and that's where the risk is really involved.
Ji.
Uh, Making a sweeping statement that the productivity of persons with disability by and large is more than the other one, I think there's a risk in this thing.
Ji.
I have seen over the years, there could be certain professions where the individual productivity of a person with disability may be even more than the non-disabled person,
Right.
right? But the problem arises with regard to productivity when the basics are wrong.
Hmm.
I cite a specific example here.
Hmm.
I don't want to name the union territory. One union territory advertised the posts. There was a post of peon, no, sorry, post of Mali and post of lecturer in English. Now, when it came to reserving these posts, the post of lecturer in English was reserved for a deaf, and the post for Mali was reserved for a blind person.
Oh.
Now, if that be the action taken by the concerned authorities, you can well imagine what would be the productivity of these two people.
Hmm.
And in fact, ultimately, this thing went right up to the court, and then the reservation, this thing was changed. It is better if it is a post of Mali, perhaps a deaf would do this job much better. And if it is post of lecturer in English, or for that matter any language, so blind can do justice to it. Maybe he or she may do even better than others.
Right.
So ये भी चीजें जो हैं, they need to be really taken care of.
Right.
So otherwise, too much of overgeneralization many a time is little dangerous, little risky. This
Yes.
is what I wanted to clarify.
So, thank you, Professor Sani.
I have seen, you see, there are certain professions like when we talk about deaf. A deaf could be an excellent photo editor. A deaf could be an excellent artist. A deaf could be an excellent art teacher, but he or she can't be a language teacher.
Hmm.
So I think so. It is always better look to the job and then look to the kind of person with disability who can really perform that job.
Yes.
Wisdom lies in that.
Dr.
You
Chaddha,
know,
Dr. Chaddha, may I?
yeah. Please, Khatri sir.
CI has made two very good films of people with disabilities doing different kinds of work. So if you want, I can have it sent to you or to Dr. Sreni.
Yeah.
And you can upload
Yes,
it.
sir. Sir.
So it will be a pleasure.
Please do so, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Really, thank you. Thank you, Professor Seni and Professor Khatri, for bringing about that kind of summarization to the issue. See, which we have already talked about, the mapping part. So when we talk about mapping part, there's the skill part and the deficit part can be bridged, and then only it would be seen that what area that person can take up and in a productive manner. And then as has it has been brought about that certain kind of repetitive task, and we saw it in the video also, that it was difficult, but then this person, maybe with lot of practice, maybe somebody who could be visually all right could have done it in maybe let's say 100 hours, and this gentleman could have done in 500 hours, but he has not left that part. He would have been constantly doing it, and that is why the precision comes up, because only practice makes a man perfect. And for them, doing so, but the part is that we have to be sensitive to the entire show. We have to be sensitive that yes, there is a deficit there, and this could be bridged about maybe some kind of encouragement, the behavioral change that we have talked about, which is a difficult task, but then it has to be brought about in times to come. And then let us be the torch bearers. Let us start from our own families and own kids, so that when they go out, they are the ones who are sensitive to all these issues. So on this note, the show comes to an end, and I would like to thank the three panelists once again, Professor J.S. Seni, Mr. Niranjan Khatri, and Shri Harman Singh Sidhu, who devoted time to all this, and they were all three very passionate speakers, talked from their heart, and to the very lovely audience who joins us day in day out. This 27 weeks have passed, starting during the COVID times, and day 12:20 p.m. And thanks to all of you for reserving your 12:20 to 2 p.m. time for this session. And I hope we should carry out, God willing, many more sessions on very important topics as such. Just two announcements. We have forwarded the feedback form to you. You requested to kindly fill it up so that we know where we went good and what all areas we could improve and what other areas you would go by. And if you want, we can add you in our the contact list also. You just need to ping upon the phone number 8727857116. I repeat, 8727857116. You can just ping on this number and we'll add you, so that all other invites we'll be giving to you. This is one. And secondly, the recording of this webinar will be available to you in a day or two. So once we have your number, we can share it with you, the recording also. Otherwise, there is a YouTube channel by the name of IHRDI, which is for Inclusive Human Resource Development Initiative, in short IHRDI. You can just go on and see the other 16, around 17, 18 recordings are available to you on this channel also. And this will also be available in a day or two. So I again thank the three panelists, the august audience, the team, the IHRDI team comprising Sanya, Mr. Talwar, Dr. S.K. Sharma, Mohammad Suleiman Sahab, and all those who help us to bring about the issue, to put the panelists on the panel, and then the various issues regarding the technical and other supports. So friends, with this we come to an end of this session. Thank you for joining. So till the time we meet again, be safe, keep take good care of yourself. So goodbye to you, sayonara, namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you.